The pattern is changing as we end the month of January, including big temperature swings, a huge shift in the jet stream, and the potential for more storm systems to impact the U.S. as we close out the month. Welcome back to another weather update, guys. I'm meteorologist Tucker Antico, and there's no doubt it's been a crazy middle of January, but those conditions are all changing countrywide here as we go from cold and snow to a bit of a different feel. That said, our weather stays active, and we're going to keep you up to date with everything coming up here in our forecast right now. Before we dive into what's ahead, I want to take a look back at this once-in-a-lifetime snowstorm for parts of the Gulf Coast. You can see the snowfall amounts right next to me here, but we also got video that came in that looked like this in places like Florida. This is Pace, Florida, where eventually 9 inches of snow was measured. So you had some just absolutely crazy totals. And if we take a look at some of these numbers here, you're going to notice that this wasn't just confined to one area. You know, we saw heavy snow that took over a huge chunk of the Gulf coastline. In fact, we'll start out here near Houston, where you can see some of those totals coming in between 2 and 5 inches. And that's just the start. As we move this over into Louisiana, we saw amounts on the order of around 10 inches of snow near Lafayette. And that was actually more in some spots than Boston, for example, saw all of last winter. We'll move this even farther to the east here. I know there were measurements as high as 8.8 inches of snow out here on the Florida Panhandle. The previous record for 24-hour snowfall in Florida was 4 inches. This just doubled it, the state record. So we're not even talking just local records. We really set the new bar with this storm, and amounts are still coming in across the Carolinas where the storm did lessen a bit, but you can see a huge swath of 6-inch totals out here near the Florida Panhandle and a huge swath of 6-inch totals out here moving into New Orleans. There have been people skating on ice downtown there. So just a crazy storm we're coming out of, but again, the pattern beginning to shift a lot. So let's jump into what you can expect and what you don't need to worry about as much of going forward through the rest of January. In our weather, everything begins at the top and comes down to the surface. So as we take a look at the changing pattern, we're going to do the same thing. And what you're seeing now is a map of the air masses overtaking the entire area of North America. And what we've noticed is that polar vortex, that lobe that we've been talking about, bringing the cold air out here, that's going to begin to retreat, and that starts a huge shift in our weather. So you're going to see those blue colors begin to move northwards as we start off the week. You're also going to want to keep an eye on this ridge out here, as that'll have some impacts on our weather across the country too, and I'll explain as we go. So we'll move this into the middle and end of the work week here, moving into Thursday and Friday, the 23rd, 24th, and Saturday the 25th here. You can see that polar air moving back north and replacing it. We don't have any one dominant weather pattern, one air mass, I should say, but instead what we're seeing is split flow. The first thing we notice is that we have those lines going pretty straight, originating in the Pacific, and we still have some cooler air trying to dip down but straightening out as we go into the northern portion of the United States. This split flow often limits the ability to create big storms, but it can keep our weather a little more active at times too. We're also seeing this ridge out in the west, which is allowing cold air to at least seep into the United States, but it is not actually going to stick around very much. So this pattern remains more zonal and progressive. So you're not seeing any of those blue colors or orange colors really take over at once, but again, you're seeing those generally flat lines, which means systems move fast across the country and they are weaker as a whole. And because there isn't a single air mass that really takes over, we're not looking at any significant temperature fluctuations. But what we're going to take a look at here are some of the anomalies, how much warmer or colder versus average our weather is expected to be. And you're noticing, again, it's been very cold. It's going to stay cold through Thursday across the eastern U.S., even into Friday, the 24th here. But what you're going to begin to notice is that as we move this forwards, those colors become a little more dull, and we have some of those red and blue colors mixing together. So that's our fast weather pattern. We're not really seeing any strong dominant storms or air masses. And as a whole, heading into the very end of the month here, we're now into The following week, this is Wednesday the 29th we're looking at, temperatures may actually be a little bit warmer than average across the country. Especially, we've been seeing hints the past few days that the north central U.S. in particular may be one of the milder spots. And while there are still some areas that will be colder, the pattern as a whole is shifting to warmer, and I'll give you a little sneak peek at the start of February. Not seeing much of a signal that cold air is really going to take over. But there will still be some shots mixed in. So some of the bigger shifts in our pattern include the temperatures and how quickly our storm systems are moving, as well as the strength. Now, that weak strength does not mean we won't have impactful storms. We're going to take a look at everything happening at the surface now, and we'll also talk about the threat for wildfires in the west as that increases, getting into this pattern as well. As we take a look at everything going on at the ground, you're going to notice that one feature really stands out, and in the beginning of our period too. As we go through Wednesday, Thursday, and even into Friday, we have this high pressure system taking over in the Great Basin. And what this is going to do is it's going to force wind east-northeast across the mountains in California. That's going to really renew our wildfire threat. I'm going to take you to the Storm Prediction Center as they have outlooks issued for that threat in our same areas outside Los Angeles, which you can see on your screen right here. And anywhere you're seeing those red colors, that's a critical wildfire risk. That's where it is on the high end of things. And of course, what we don't need is more activity in this area where resources are already, being expended, and work hours from firefighters have really been extended as well. So this is our threat on Wednesday. We also have a wildfire threat on Thursday. It does not change much, those conditions, because of that high pressure system and the direction and strength that it's forcing wind through the area. But there is some promise that on Friday, we're not seeing as much of a threat, but we're going to take a look at the numbers here because there is still the potential for some fire hazards on Friday as well. So we're going to go straight to one of our weather models here, and what we're looking at is the dryness in the air, where you're seeing some of that sort of dark orangey color. That's where your relative humidity is below 10%. That is very dry air. That means the air is only holding about 5% of the water that it otherwise could. And when you have such dry air, you have a much higher wildfire threat. So here we are on Wednesday. You're seeing those orange colors in the LA area, very dry, low relative humidities, and we'll move this forward into Thursday. And what you're going to notice again on Thursday is that those colors come right back. You have relative humidity that's on the order of about 4 or 5%, even 3% we're seeing in some spots here. So that's incredibly dry air and poses a very high risk. We'll move it into Friday as well. You're going to notice, though, on Friday, we begin to see that relative humidity try to increase a little bit overnight, and it does a little bit. But in the afternoon, once again, you have some extremely dry air here, which is why I still have some concern about that threat. But we can also take a look at our wind gusts because you need more than just one ingredient. You need more than just dry air to get wildfires going and spreading. And as we move through our Wednesday and into Thursday as well, you're seeing, again, some of those ridges with wind gusts that are going to be in excess of about 40 miles per hour. That's those red colors are indicating. And as we move this into Friday as well, that's the biggest change here. It's that the wind really is nowhere near as strong. So that's why the wildfire risk is a bit lower, but there still will be some spots where gusts are going to reach 25, 30 miles per hour. And so I wouldn't be surprised if we have fires ongoing if it is going to continue to be a threat into the end of the week, but just something we're tracking. Among other things we're watching, we're also looking at the potential for some storm systems. So we're going to take a look at everything going on here at the ground and also where there may be some rain and more snow this week. So we're going to start here with our areas of interest, and through the end of the month, you're looking at the total precipitation across the country here. And the things that stand out to me are, first of all, in the southeast, we have this area where additional precipitation is likely. That can mean rain or snow. We also have a broad area through the mountains in the west, the Rockies, that are going to feature perhaps more active weather. And our last area of interest is going to be more so southern Canada, but also the Great Lakes, where there may be some activity in our weather too. That's all precipitation. But snowfall here, another story. You notice that area of precip in the south. It does not seem likely that we are going to see any more snow, but that could be a lot of rain. For the mountains, the Rockies, generally speaking, we're looking at what may be a decent additional snowfall. That's why you're seeing these colors outlined in blue and even purple. And the same thing here for these lakes, where we've already seen a lot of lake effect snow so far this winter, and there may be more as we go through the week. But what I will also add is that the Midwest is relatively quiet, and the Northeast, while there are some areas where storm systems may pass, The Northeast as a whole does seem to be slightly quieter here, but let's go to the surface and take a look at everything that's possible moving forward. And we're going to start here on Wednesday, and what I'll say is that you can first of all see our system leaving us, high pressure replacing it out here in the southeast, and really the entire east coast is going to be quiet with that high pressure. It's also going to signify the exit of that cold air that we've seen. Like we said before, we also have high pressure in the west. So because of that, we are pretty dry. We just have this 1 weak low pressure system bringing some lake effect snow here Wednesday, likely Thursday, and even potentially Friday. There may be some light lake effect snow out there as well. So that's where we end this week. And we're still seeing an area of high pressure across a good chunk of the country here, keeping things dry and actually sunny for many of us. Next thing we're going to notice, remember in the very beginning, we talked about that split flow. We have flow across the southern U.S. It's going to keep things a bit more active in the south, but we also have this flow out of Canada, which is going to keep things more active in the north. That said, because it's zonal, things are moving fast and they're weaker. There's no hard hitters, and you're going to see that as we move this through the upcoming weekend. Some light snow, again, bringing lake effect snow to the Great Lakes. We also have a lot of high pressure in the area, too. That high pressure is keeping things generally quiet in the Midwest, and it is protecting most of the East Coast, but there is a little bit of moisture coming up from those systems thanks to the subtropical jet there. So there we are looking at the start of next week now. Still a little bit of moisture in the southeast to work with, some rain, perhaps a little bit of snow making its way as clipper systems continue to just clip the northern U.S., and there will be some areas that are seeing snow actually in the southern portion of the Rockies out there too into next week. But as we continue to wrap up the month, the only chance for anything more significant would be towards the very end of January. We're going to keep an eye on this jet here. If it can begin to phase with the polar jet, if these can come together in the Northeast, that could bring the potential for a much bigger storm. But we're talking more theoreticals here at the end of the month or the start of February. I'm just noting now the pattern. It's not favorable, but it's not favorable for the potential for a storm at the very end of the month at the start of February. Otherwise, high pressure, as you just saw, keeps things pretty quiet, and you can pretty clearly see those two different jets that are going through the country and a generally quiet system directing our weather actually out west. So that's part of the reason we see this more fast flow, weaker systems, and overall dry weather across the country to end the month. So with that, we'll wrap up this video and want to make sure that you're ready for the big pattern change. This one, of course, bringing some milder weather, so it comes with relief and quieter conditions too. But we'll keep an eye on everything as we get into the start of February. And of course, as always, if you have any weather questions or you just want a personal forecast, comment below and I'll make sure you get everything you need with weather info. And we'll be back here with an update again coming pretty soon.